see if we got. Are we recording? We are live. I'm looking at a couple of cameras because I got this camera here and then I got this camera here. So, with that being said, my name is Steve and I'm retired in Korea and I picked up a new hobby, and one part of that hobby is to start with resin printing. You can make models and figures, and of course I don't have any here, but yeah, you could probably pick some models out, like Warhammer 40,000 action figures. You could do some really cool stuff. You could do, cast models and cars, just flowers. Pretty much anything that you can dream up can be printed on a 3D printer. Now, there's two types of 3D printers. There's an FDM, which is a filament printer, which is kind of like if you've seen on a spool, like a giant spool, but instead of having thread, it has a plastic going around it, kind of like a big giant plastic thread. And that thread will go through a machine, and the machine will say, okay, well, we want to print the hand of Thanos. And so we've got the hand there, and it's got the code, it's been scanned, it's in this slicing program. And then what it does, it translates and tells the computer of the slicing of the 3D printer to heat up that, or put that melted plastic from that spool that's fed into kind of a hot end thing, which heats it all up and melts it, and then it just lays down layer by layer by layer until it prints out the thing that you want. That's an FDM printer. And I'm just keeping this real simple because I'm pretty simple. So if I can understand it, you can understand it. And I'm old, I'm 57, and I'm just getting into 3D printing. With that, there's also resin printing. Resin printing is where you have a material that is how can I put it? It's a liquid that reacts to light. And when light hits it, UV light hits it, that's when it hardens. So if no UV light hits it, then it stays in its liquid state, okay? So basically what happens is you have a vat, and in this vat it has a clear bottom, and that vat sits on a computer screen or a screen, and then UV light is shot up through the bottom, through that translucent screen into different points, and it builds layers, and basically it hardens the resin, the photoreactive resin, into hard parts, and then you've seen some videos. I mean, just Google it. You'll figure it out. But that is really cool because you can get some insane details on a lot of this stuff. So, for example, right over here is what we end up having. Is I purchased the Elegoo Saturn III Ultra, which is a 12K resin printer, and you can get some awesome details on that printer. Of course, you got to use resin. It's got to, light comes up from the bottom, and you got to cover and all that stuff. So it's pretty amazing on what you can do with 3D printing. You can print parts. You can print, useful things that actually can, cups, art projects, whatever tools, anything that you can pretty much come up with, you can print. And I'm not joking. There are some things out there that they print is like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's crazy. So with a resin 3D printer, what it does is goes through and you can build all this stuff. But before you can build it, you need a slicing program. So it's one thing to get that thing there, which is the resin printer, and then you'll need some other stuff like, let me see if I can find some information there. If I can add a graphic. Can I add a graphic? I don't know. Maybe. Let me see if I can add a graphic off the desktop. And bam. Okay. So, wow, that's huge. We definitely need to downsize that. There's some other equipment that you might need. And so, for example, you might need a wash and cure station, because when you print something in resin, even though part of the resin is hardened, a lot of it is still in that liquid state. So when you're done printing that item, you need to take that out of the vat and the resin, you need to wash that off. And so that's why you have this thing here is a wash and cure station. So you wash it in a solvent, and most people wash in IPA or isopropyl alcohol, usually like 90, 95, 99% IPA. And then it goes into the yellow machine, which you put your model in there like you see in the picture, and then it shines UV light on it, and it cures that item that you printed for, for rigidity, for strength, and so on and so forth. So yeah, you got to go through a cleaning process, and you got to clean your prints up, and then you got to put them under the UV light. Now, some people are old school and will just set it outside in the sunlight and turn it around and whatever. The great thing about technology is there is now convenience into doing those things, and you have wash and cure stations, and that will wash it, and instead of having a bucket and full of IPA and alcohol and a toothbrush and cleaning, with sponges and cleaning your item, you can use a wash station which kind of whirls the IPA around. Think of it like a dishwasher or a washing machine. It washes your prints, and it's clean, it's convenient, and then you can throw it into your curing station, which has UV lights and all that stuff, and it makes the print really neat. Hardens it up, and so you can do whatever. Now, there's different types of resin. There's hard resins, there's flexible resins, there's clear resins, there are different colored of resins. There's like ABS plastic type resins. There's a ton of different resins. And part of the interesting thing about this is what I'm finding out is that you need to take your resin, and there's certain settings for the resin that go into your computer and into your slicer program that can give you better results when you print that item on a resin printer. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. Kind of a little bit of a learning curve. So what I'm doing now is passing on some information to let you know that it's more involved than what I thought. And because not only do you have to buy this, you have to buy that, and then you have to buy resin, and then, the files. There's free files that you can get from like Thingiverse or Cults 3D, or just put, 3D resin printing files free. And there's a whole bunch of websites that have free stuff that you can print. But then there's also files that you can buy and purchase and print some really cool things as well. Now, I haven't printed anything yet because I've got that, but I don't got these yet. That's not, my wash and cure station isn't going to come here until 6 or 7 December. I just got an update. So it's getting here, but I've got the printer, I've got the resin, got the IPA. I'm all ready to go, but I don't have that stuff there. So until then, to kind of, and there's more stuff than you need. It's not just this and IPA. I mean, you need to get, some nitrile gloves because resin is caustic and it can itch and cause problems and people can get allergic to it. It doesn't smell really good, apparently. So, it's not something you do in the living room table unless you're single and don't have any significant others around where the smell would bother them. Which is possible, or you can do it in a spare room or a garage or a basement, and you need some ventilation. You have to have the PPE, personal protective equipment. You might need some eyeglasses. You definitely don't want to breathe this stuff in, so you might want to open a window. But then there's other things that come involved. So like the 3D printer, resin printer also needs to have a nice temperature of where it's at to get better results when you do your resin printing. So some people have gone so far as to get heaters or put enclosures around their printers like this here, and it'll keep a controlled environment within that tent or that structure, that enclosure where their 3D printer is at, and keep it at a certain temperature because they got a little mini heater in there that they set the temperature and the whole 9 yards to keep that resin at a certain, 25 to 30 degrees Celsius or, whatever it is, that is most beneficial for good printing. So yeah, this can get really involved. And then you come into the exposure time and their settings and the whole 9 yards. You're going to be buying IPA, you're going to be buying gloves and all of this stuff. So if you think that it's just like, oh, I'll get this and I'll be good to go, no. There's way more into this than what is first thought. And let me see if I can get back to where are we? There we are. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot more involved into 3D printing, especially when it comes to resin printing. If you're doing filament printing, FDM printing, it's not as bad because you buy the printer, there's the slicing program, and then you buy some filament, and you can pretty much just go. Resin printing has some more steps. Like I said, you got to clean with IPA or some type of other solvent. Some people do simple green or mean green or whatever. Then you got to cure it, and then there's the aspect of getting resin on your hands, and some people have allergic reactions, and the volatile VOCs of whatever the hell those are, the things that aren't good for you, especially if you're in California. All that needs to be taken into consideration. So, slicer programs, resin printing, there's more to it than what I knew. And yeah, so I'm passing on this information to you that if you're thinking about resin printing, go into this with all the information so that you can make a fully informed decision instead of me just like, hey, I'm going to resin print, and then going online and find a good printer, and I thought, oh, I'm good to go. And then the next thing, it's like, well, you got to buy resin, you got to buy IPA, you got to need a wash and cure station or a bucket and protective equipment. And it's like, okay, maybe I should have went FDM. I don't know. But with that being said, I'm going to stick with resin printing, and maybe I'll do FDM printing a little bit later on. So now that we got the backstory, and it's more involved than FDM printing, resin printing is really neat because you can do models, you can get details that are insane with resin printing that you cannot get with FDM printing. So if you're into models, if you're into something, jewelry work, you can print jewelry. And matter of fact, on resin 3D printers, they actually did my teeth. So, implants, that's how all those things are made, is through resin 3D printers. And they use a special resin, a hardened resin, that once it's cured, those are your teeth. It's amazing. It's crazy what they can do. So, yeah, it's just pretty wild. So let's say you have the equipment. We go back and what do we have here? We've got our printer. We got our wash and cure station, we got our IPA, we've got our gloves and resin and the whole 9 yards, and we're ready to go. And then we need a program to slice or load models into, and that will slice that model into layers, because one layer is like, you can set it to crazy, but it's really small. And that layer could be 0.025, it could be 0.5, it could be millimeters. So yeah, insane amount of detail depending on the quality of your resin printer. So this thing right here, that printer right there, the Elegoo Saturn 3 Ultra is a 12K printer, which is probably one of the higher quality resin printers until you get into commercial printing. So yeah, I decided to go big or go home. But you need that program to slice that model up, and then you need to add supports, and there's all this stuff. So yeah, it's pretty involved. There's a bit of a learning curve when it comes to 3D printing. So you might see up here where it says Cheeto Box or Lychee. Those are two programs that I've seen the most recommended for resin printing. And we're going to take a look at some of those things. So with that being said, let me see if I can switch. And boom, yeah, there I am. I'm still picture in picture. There's my desktop and everything. We're going to get rid of some of these pictures here. There's me and the wife when we got here in Korea. In case you didn't know, I retired in Korea and we're here. But now we're going to attempt to show current application. So let's start Chi2Box. Chi2Box is a slicing program. We're going to kind of put this, we'll move that up there. It is a slicing program, and it'll take the models that you put into it and slice it into layers. So when the light comes up from the bottom and it's in that vat, and it hardens the resin in there, and then it does another layer, and the machine moves. It's really cool. I mean, you can Google it. I'm not going to explain everything. But with this, this is the Chi2Box. This is the basic version. So this is a free version of Chi2Box slicing program, and which is really neat because a lot of people just use this free program to print their stuff and they're good to go. There's also a pro version that you could buy on a subscription basis that gives you access to more bells and whistles and the whole 9 yards. But the first thing, we'll just do kind of a little bit of an interesting thing. So around the top, we've got, you can open a file, you can save a project, you can screenshot and record things, you can undo or redo certain things. You can copy items. So if you have one file and you want to copy and make and print like 5 or 6, you can copy those and make as many prints that will fit on your build plate. Then we have the auto layout. So if you click that, it'll take all those items and it will arrange them on your build plate, as you can see there. The other thing we have is we can hollow out objects. So if you have a model, instead of wasting a lot of resin, you can hollow out the model, or at least the slicer program will hollow it out, so that you don't have to waste a lot of resin. Okay, so that's kind of interesting there. And then you can put holes in it, because if you hollow it out and there's resin trapped within the cavity of that item, and that's not allowed to cure, it'll expand and eventually it'll break your item and it will leak and it will just be ugly. So, and then the other thing we have over here is repair, because there are some models, and when you get them from wherever you get them, you can just do a search for 3D resin models for free, and some of those models might have structural defects, and so you can hit the repair button. And I know Chi2Box Basic, Chi2Box Pro, Lychee, I think Lychee's got a free version, but they also have a pro version or a premium version. It's really interesting, but it'll repair all those things. Other things that we have is once we get, you could move an item on the build plate, and that's what this rectangular item is here. And then you could rotate that item, you could scale the item up or down, and then you could mirror it to select and do whatever you want to mirror that. Off on the right hand side we have this box, and we got this little home button, and what we can end up doing is rotating and looking at different viewpoints of our build plate. So that build plate is the area of which you can print things on your resin printer. And first thing that you can end up doing is going through and actually picking which machine that you're going to use. And that's setting Chi2Box services. I can't remember how that ended up doing, but there's a way to go through. I told you I was brand new to all this. Settings, that's it. So what you can end up doing is going to the settings, and you can actually pick different, you can add a different machine, so add a new printer, so you could go through and it's got pictures and colors and things like that. So I'm good with pictures and colors, but it has a lot of different manufacturers of 3D printers, and you can pick the model and whatever, and it'll show up as that's the default one that you're using. The neat thing about Chi2Box and other, I think the more popular or reputable slicing programs like this, you can add multiple machines to them. So if you have, like I have the Elegoo Saturn 3 Ultra, and if I get an Elegoo Saturn 8 or an any cubic whatever, and I have multiple resin printers, I can use this program with all of those different resin printers. So, there's some versatility within these resin printing programs. You can actually pick the resin and the resin type. Of course, in the premium or pro versions of some slicer programs, you can get a lot more detail. You can get into exposure times and so on and so forth. Talking about printing and your settings. I mean, this is insane. The layer height, 0.05 millimeters, and you can go down to some, like 0.01 or whatever. It's some crazy detail. Exposure time is the time of how much light is going to be flashed onto that resin. So it'll harden, and that'll be your layer. Bottom exposure time, transition and types, and lift speed and detraction and retraction and lifting balance and speed and all, retraction, bottom retract, lift, rest time before lifting and after lift and whatever. Pretty much just leave this stock the way it is. And so, like I said, if you're going to do this as a hobby, I'm letting you know, there's a bit of a learning curve to this because resin has so many different, it's not like all resins are the same. Resins are made by different companies and they have different variables. They have different viscosity. They react different to the UV light over a period of time. So the exposure time for one resin might not be right for an exposure time for another resin. And yeah, you got to dial all that stuff in. So yeah, interesting. But a lot of companies are getting better. And so the great thing about that is it's becoming more user-friendly. Of course, I just showed you that screen. It doesn't seem like it, but it actually is. It's getting a lot better. And that's why I decided to get into this now. One, because I'm retired, and two, it ends up it's more user-friendly than what it was before. So I'm a little late to the game, but hey, it's better late than never. We got some other stuff you can actually go through, but to really look at some of these other things, we're going to actually get a model on here. So we're going to go to Open Up, and we're going to go to my desktop, and we're going to find, let's go to Warhammer, because I'm also painting Warhammer figures. And do I have, no, that's all painting stuff. Nope, I don't got it there. I guess I got to go back to the 3D printer stuff. Resin printing files. And I got a bunch of printer files. Because I got the printer, and then because I had to order that and I had to wait for that, my wash and cure station comes in, I had to order that and wait for it's still on a slow boat from China. Yeah, there we go. So let's see what happens. Which one are we going to do? Sister one. So we can just grab that and drag it, or if we go through this file and opening up, we can highlight it and click open. So the program is going to take this thing, and there it is. So, we can actually zoom in, and we can see this. We can move it around in Chitubox, and then of course you could move it along this axis, or on this one by left clicking and dragging on the color, or bring it off of the build plate that way. Over here on the left, you can put it on the plate. You can center it. You could reset it to what it originally was. So if you screw something up, you can go back and fix it. We can end up going here by rotate, and you can rotate by degrees on your X, Y, and Z axis, which is kind of interesting. So from front to back, that's your X. Going from left to right, that is your Y, and up and down is your Z axis. So if we just grab like this red circle, and we can move our item and rotate it along those axes. And we can, we could spin them around, put your left foot in, your right foot out, shake it all about. You could do all that stuff. And, we could reset and do it all over again. The other thing we can end up doing is scaling. So we can lock the ratio, which is kind of important. So we can just kind of grab any one of these and we could make this, you can make it pretty huge. So yeah, and you'll have a measurement for the different axes. So for how high it is, it's 45.22 millimeters because that's what that is there. In a percentage, it's at 120.82% of as big as the original file was 100%. So we made it a little bit bigger by scaling it up. And yeah, I mean, look at the detail on that. What the hell? I put it on the plate. Okay. So you can see the details on this, and it's pretty much insane because this is the graphical representation of this, and the details that you can get on these prints is insane. Just absolutely crazy. So when we're talking about the slicer program, slicing this into layers, that's what this little slider bar on the right is. So if we pull this down, we'll kind of, ooh, look at what we see there. And it's going down slice by slice. So if we continue on, now it's down at the very bottom, but the very first is right there. So it's getting that first layer in there. Granted, it's not standing flat, but the resin printer will go through, shine the light on each layer, harden the resin, and then it goes to the next layer and it'll harden that layer until it just keeps doing this over a long period of time. And boom, next thing you know, you get your print. So yeah, that's kind of wild. What can we go through next? Oh yeah, this little thing on the top right. We have the home button, so we'll go back to a predetermined view so that you can see your entire build plate. If I want to rotate it, I can hit the left arrow, I can hit the right arrow. If I want to look from the bottom, or if I want to look from the top down, or I can do the right click and I can manipulate that as well. If it ends up, let's say it's moved off of the build plate, that's where we get that little red indicator of kind of giving us a warning saying, hey, this is off the plate, so, you know, put it back in the center or whatever. So yeah, really, really interesting. Not bad. Nice. This one is obviously is it already hollowed out? I don't know if it's hollowed out or not. Yeah, it looks like some of that is hollowed out. Most of it doesn't look hollowed out. Maybe it's not. I'm just wondering until it gets about, I don't know, it's hard to say. That looks really odd, doesn't it? So there might be some hollowed out cavities in here, which could trap resin in there. I'm not sure. This is a free file, so, you know, it is what it is. But just for an example to get you familiar with the slicing program. Now, the other thing that we can end up doing with Cheeto Box Basic, the free version, is going here to the top right. Click that little button there, and this goes to the supports. Because when you print something, it has to have supports. So the supports are needed to hold that layer that is being printed and hold it onto the build plate through a series of supports. And then the other layer goes on, another layer goes on. We have to remember that it doesn't print like you see on the screen. It actually prints upside down. And so the build plate goes into the vat of resin, the light shines up from the bottom, it cures it, then it lifts up a little bit, does the next layer, lifts up and does the next layer. So something has to hold those slicing or those individual layers to the build plate, and that's what we see this gray area here. That is a build plate. That's kind of a raft type thing, and then there's different supports that you could put on here. Now, some resin slicing programs you can do automatic manual supports. You have light, medium, or heavy, and so like say if I wanted to support, and usually wherever you see red, you're going to need a support. And so like down here on the feet, we put some items there. And if you notice that black, that is a layer. So we probably want one at the very first layer, and then, you know, something like that. And then you could do other ones as well. So we'll just go to, you know, boom, that's probably the good one there, and there, and over there. And then you could start, you know, just putting supports everywhere. Now, the cool thing is, and you can see there's your supports. So is that kind of cool or what? Now, supporting is really an art because it needs to be put in a position where you don't have a lot of overhang like this. So usually we'll go back over here to the preparation, and what we'll end up doing is we'll just rotate this. Let's go back here. And yes, we want to remove the supports. So we want to kind of do that, and I think we kind of want to do that. Now, this is all just what I've been reading online, so, you know, take what I say with a grain of salt. But with that, because it is in the position that it is right here, we don't have a lot of overhang, and those things are kind of going up. And you want your supports not on the front of your miniature, but you want them on the back because it's less noticeable and it won't interfere or leave marks on the front, which is generally what you're going to be looking at. So, yeah. And the supports will be able to be broken off. And then you can, you know, you might have to file a little bit, but it's incredible on what they can do with this stuff. So generally kind of like that. But some programs have in their support section, they also have automatic supports. So yeah, if we go down here like this one, it has automatic supports, which is what we see here. If we click that, and you got plus platform and plus all. If you hit plus platform on G2 Box Basic, it'll add automatic supports to the outside of the figure and down to the build plate or the platform. If you hit plus all, that'll add supports not only to the outside, but if your model is hollowed out on the inside, it'll put supports in there as well. So, but we're not going to really get into that. So let's just hit the all platform. G2 Box is going to go through, and it's going to automatically throw those things in there. And that's kind of amazing. But if we go down to the bottom here, we still see a lot of red, so we might have to go through and add some additional supports to, you know, hit these items to make sure that it prints out well. And again, it's a computer software program. It's really dependent upon, you know, it's going to do the best that it can, but, you know, let's see what else we got. Let's kind of, you know, there's definitely you definitely need some more supports here, and you know, to shore up some of these things because they can't just hang in midair. So yeah, there's an art to actually doing supports and things like that. Let's see if we can get one there, but you kind of get the idea. So if you're thinking, yeah, I'm going to get into resin 3D printing, it's not as easy as just hitting auto support and running and printing because your print could fail because there's not enough supports. And you can't just print stuff into thin air. It has to be connected to something else. There's so much that goes into supporting these. And if you, like I said, if you start looking at videos on YouTube of people that know what they're doing, good Lord. Yeah, they got like master classes on supports and all of this stuff. So if you're thinking to buy a resin printer, throw some resin into that, click on a model, put it in here, hit auto support. It might print and it might not. The technology is getting better, but there still needs, you know, this might be a good place to start with supports, but definitely you're going to have to add more support. So again, there's that learning curve. There's something else that didn't know, and I'm letting you know about all of this stuff. So if you're thinking, hey, I think resin printing would be really cute, Cool. I think maybe that would be something I would want to do. Again, the learning curve is kind of big. You don't think it is, but then when you get into this stuff, you find out that yes, it is rather big. So, yeah. But then what you can go through is you can play with this, and it'll show, your print. Let's see. And basically it'll start down at the bottom here. That'll be like your first layer. Actually, it's layer number, whatever, 1.35 or 30 or whatever it is. And the resin printer will harden each layer, and then, it goes up, and eventually, boom, however many hours later, there's your model. And depending if your supports are good or not, or well placed, will have a direct impact on whether your model or figure prints out successfully, or it ends up being a hot mess and you wasted a bunch of resin. Yeah, so there's that. So let's see if we go back here, and now let's say if we did all this, we've got all the supports that we need, and we're happy with it because we watched a ton of videos on YouTube and we practiced, and we've got supports out the wazoo. Go over here to the right hand side, and we can hit slice, and G2Box will run through, and it will show and show you a representation of what will happen. So over here on the right hand side, the machine that it's going to print on, normal resin, the volume of resin, the weight, which is going to be 10.7 grams. The price comes out to 0.32 cents or 33 cents, and this will take an hour and 31 minutes and 58 seconds approximately. Again, times will vary depending on your printer, on the resin, on the settings, and so on and so forth. So you see exposure time, lift distance. What else do we see there? I'm trying to look around the camera. So we got that. But here, okay, so, and this really gets slow because it's trying to do two graphical things at the same time. Let me see if that'll even work. So you can see it's going painfully slow, but you can see it's going layer by layer. And remember how it was 0.05 millimeters? That's the layer height. Now you could set it to a thicker layer height and it would print faster, but you're going to lose some of the details in your print. So trying to find that happy medium of good quality prints and fast printing, you got to balance that out to whatever you want. And over here on the right hand side, you see that black box. That is, the white part is where the light is flashing up onto the vat through a translucent screen, and that's where the light is specifically going to harden that resin, that UV light, and then it goes up to the next level. So if we kind of, and that's the thing with G2Box, it just ends up, it can be a little power hungry program here. So, and there's a couple of things that you can end up doing if you're happy with all this. And in the settings, you can set, well, how much for a kilogram of, or 1 liter of resin, and it costs me $25-30, whatever it is. That's how you get that price determination on your item. So there's usually a couple of ways. You can save on this right-hand side. You could save it to a USB drive and then take that USB drive, like this one here, and you could plug this into your resin printer. Most of them have USB plugs. If you don't like sending things over the network and people having access to your computer and printer and whatever, you can do it manually the old school way. Or what you can end up doing is do network sending. And some printers will end up having Wi-Fi capabilities so that you could send this sliced print to your printer over your own Wi-Fi network. Mine's not found because I don't even have the printer turned on. Some printers just have the USB, some have network capabilities. So again, that's something to take into consideration. If you don't mind going back and forth with your USB stick, then feel free to take this and run back and forth. Or if your computer's in the same room, it's not a big deal. But like in this room, where the computer's at and stuff like that, in a separate bedroom is where I have a spare bedroom, is where I have the 3D printer. So can I get up and walk 15 steps and put this into the USB of my printer? Yeah. Am I lazy and send it over the network? Oh yeah, even more. So yeah, it's yes, fun. So anyway, that's ChiTuBox, the basic version. And what I found out is a really interesting thing, because I started playing with it, the free version, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. You know, ChiTuBox, and so many people had sung the praises of ChiTuBox, and they had gotten the pro version, which is a subscription, and I hate subscription things. I'm old school. I think you should pay one price, and that's what you should do. I want to own it. I want to have a perpetual license. I don't want to have a subscription. Granted, some subscriptions are like $5, $6, $7 a month. It's not that bad if you can subscribe to it monthly, or you can subscribe to it on a yearly basis, and usually you get a discount. And then usually, Cyber Monday, Thanksgiving sales, Christmas sales, major holidays, it will have a 10, 20, 30% discount on slicing programs. So I ended up getting a discount off the ChiTuBox, and it was a pretty significant discount. So I was like, well, hell, I've been playing around with it. I like it. I'm familiar with it. I can do all this cool stuff. I'm going to get the pro version. So we're going to take a look at the pro version. And here it is. There's my email address. That's Joy. So here is, I'll just kind of throw that right there. Pretty similar, right? Pretty similar to, let's get back to that. Pretty similar to what we saw with the free version, except there's more bells and whistles. So you can open project, save project, recently opened project, save all as, export or merge export. So if you have multiple items on there, you could merge those all together and save them, or you could select one item off of your multiple items and you could export that. Pretty much everything is you have profiles over here on the right-hand side for the different types of resin. You already have your machine down in the bottom left, where you could add multiple printers in the same fashion, and they would be lined up on the bottom there, which is really cool. That's a great little interface to have to show which printer you're working off of, and if you have multiple printers, it's easy to identify that. And so what we're going to end up doing is we're going to open, and no, I don't want to do Gandalf. Good Lord, that was like insane. That was crazy busy. So let's just go back and we'll open up 3D print files, and we'll go to I don't want to get something too crazy, but let's go to, I don't know, where's old man? Oh, Thanos. And there's the bust of Thanos. So we'll just do that. And boom, that's what we end up having. Now, obviously, Thanos is a little large here for our build plate. So we're going to click on that, and we're going to scale him down so he actually fits on our build plate. And then we'll kind of just go in that way. So yeah, Thanos is pretty wild. Kind of a cool little guy there. You can print him out and do all that stuff. And we're going to rotate, so that way the supports are on the back. We kind of split the difference of, not having supports on his face. We don't want to have a big overhang like that. So generally it's kind of like 30, 45% is the rule of thumb, but it really depends on the item that you're slicing and doing, so we're just going to keep them like that for this example. And again, I'm not experienced in this. I'm just learning all of this stuff, kind of showing you what to expect if you get into resin printing. And kind of like everything else in my life, I've jumped in and then I found out what happens when you're in that thing kind of like joining the Army. I joined the Army at 17 years old, and I got in, and then it was like, oh, wow, this is different. They were still beating people up in basic training when I was in the Army. But I digress. So anyway, we can go through all this. We can prepare our model, and we can split the model. We can orientate it. We can, do some auto, put it in the center of our build plate area. We could add tags. So in other words, we could actually put text on there. Boolean operation. I can do my taxes. I can do, a business plan and the whole 9 yards, but I hate this advanced math, and I really don't understand why there's a Boolean operation, because basically that's kind of like a 3D CAD type of function. So I'm not sure why it's in here. You can cut this program up on the different axes. So in other words, if I wanted to split it in half on the X, Y, or Z because it's too big, I could do that, and then I could print out those different pieces. So I could take a larger print and split it into different pieces and make it print on the small printer that I have, and I could do larger items, and then I could glue them together afterwards. Does that make sense? Okay. The other thing we could end up doing is hollowing out these items, and we can go to wall thickness and however big that we want it, like 2 millimeters or 2.5. You can have an infill, and that infill is the support structure on the inside. As we see, there's a grid, and it goes from 0 to 100%. If you go to 100%, it's going to use a lot of resin. The lower you go down in the percentage is going to minimize the amount of supports that you have on that hollowed out inside of the cavity. So we're just going to go for, let's say 20% and see what happens. So that's what we got going. Precision, I'm not sure what that is, but I have played with it, and I know that the higher the precision, the more taxing it is on your computer system. Now, I have a iMac Mini 2023 with 32 gig RAM, so I do video editing with Final Cut Pro 10 with 1 to 2 hours of video, multicams, the whole 9 yards, and it'll tax my system a little bit, but I can go through it. I haven't had problems. So we're going to hollow this thing out, and we're going to hit apply, and it takes, that's fairly quick. Boom. And there it shows the visualization of all of those things, which is really cool. I really like this. So if we go back down here, and what we can end up seeing is the support structure within that model. So it hollowed it out, and then it also put that structure in there to help with the printing and the integrity of the print. So that's pretty sturdy. So that's kind of cool. And I like the animation. That was like, okay, that is really cool. So we've hollowed out the model. But the other thing we need to do is that if it's hollow on the inside, and remember this is printing upside down, that you could have resin trapped in there. And if the resin is trapped inside your model or your print, then what happens is that it doesn't get cured by UV light. And so eventually your model will break or bust, and it will leak out, and it'll ruin your print, and you waste a lot of resin. So we got to put some drain holes in here. So that's where we go to, excuse me, that's where we go to dig hole up here. And boom, there is the dig hole. And we have some things. I leave it at penetration. What does it have? Penetration, non-penetration. We're going to penetrate. And then like the 0 with the line through it, you can change the size or the diameter of the hole that you're going to put. And, even though it's not getting any bigger on the screen, it does increase on the millimeters as we toggle that. So even though it's going up to 10, on that left-hand side, it's not showing it getting bigger, but it actually is. Then we have B, which is the distance of that hole. C is kind of like the camphor cut, because you could actually take this hole out of an item, and it could print with your item, so that way you can drain the resin out of it. And then when you're done draining the resin and you cure it, you can put that plug back in or plug the hole, which is really neat. I'll show you. We'll click that down here, is to keep the hole, which is so cool. So now, see, we've got the hole, so we could put it in the middle of his forehead, and yeah, that would look really weird. So we're going to go down here to the bottom, and we're going to click on the bottom, and we'll just put, a couple of holes there to drain the resin out. And, as we see on this build plate down here, we see these holes. Those are the plugs for the holes that we just put down onto the bottom. So we've got 3 of those. So let's say I want to undo that because I don't want to keep the holes. So I unclick and I can put a hole. Let's say I just want to put 1 hole in there, and boom, yeah, there's the hole to drain out the resin, as this is upside down. Now the other thing that we might need, because again, this is printing upside down, so maybe a better way to do this would be to have it rotated so the head is towards the bottom of the build plate, and then you have the holes. Or you might end up doing something like this and put a hole, kind of like, let's take it down a little bit more. Maybe on the back of the model, and there's the hole. But wait a second, we want to plug that up afterwards. So we're going to undo that. Go down here, we'll keep the hole. We'll put the hole in the back, and there we have our plug down at the bottom there. So that's going to work out for us. Let's say that is going to work, and we'll be able to drain the resin and whatever. If you want to put holes on the side, you could and plug them. But remember, if you keep the hole or you keep the plug to fill the hole, you're going to have to glue that in with some kind of special glue or whatever. And then you're going to have to sand it and make it smooth before you go into the paint process, so it doesn't look like you made a hole and put a plug in there. Yeah, does it make sense? So anyway, when we get to this place, and this is Chi2 Box Pro. This is the subscription version with all the bells and whistles, and there's a ton of different stuff. And so we're going to go to support. It's got repair. It can repair holes from everywhere, but we're not going to get into that. We're just going to go right to the supports. And like we did before in the other one, well, let's just go to middle supports, and it kind of shows that little raft there. We're not changing any settings. Z lift height is usually 5 millimeters, so it'll lift that model off of the build plate by that distance there. And apparently this is the rule of thumb that everybody abides by, is that 4 or 5 millimeters off the build plate is the optimal thing to do. So I'm just going to parrot that. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that's what a lot of experienced resin printer people say, like Uncle Jesse, the 3D Musketeers, and a number of other reputable people. So I'm going to take their word for it and run with it. Trust but verify. So also you could put in the supports manually. As you can see here, we could do that, light, medium, heavy, but we're going to go down to this where we're going to add supports. We'll just hit all. And again, this is the premium paid version. And as you can see, something happened. Something changed. Something is amiss. Because as we look at this here, the program freezes. It's not supposed to do this. And you might think, well, you got an older computer. No, I got a 2023 computer with 32 gig of RAM, and I'm not running a lot of stuff outside of like Messenger and an old eCam or whatever. Matter of fact, if I quit eCam, then we won't be able to do the live stream. But yeah, it freezes right here every single time. And sometimes I can get it to put heavy automatic supports, but I can't do medium or light. Sometimes I can do light, but I definitely can't do medium. And that's over a wide array of artists, different types of files, different types of figures, big, small, whatever it is. This isn't an outlandishly huge figure. And even if I reduce the scale, it will still lock up like this. It doesn't matter if I wait 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I've waited an hour. This thing just freezes. And yeah, so you might be wondering, is Chi2 Box Pro worth it? Now there's a story to all this. it ends up, so I contact Cheetah Box and I say, hey, I got the subscription service. I tried the basic version. I loved it. Works well, as you saw before. The free version, I don't have any problems with. But when I go to the pro version, what happens is it freezes up. And so I'll have to close the program. And yeah, you can see it's just froze. It's not going to do anything. Got to close the program, reopen it up. I can put in all the manual supports that I want, which is probably what a lot of people would say that you need to learn how to do anyway to get the best support for your miniatures or items that you're printing. So I contact Cheetah Box and they're like, oh, yeah, what is your computer? Oh, how much RAM? What is it? And so I sent them all that information. I sent them screenshots, pictures and stuff showing, hey, this is where it freezes. This is the file I'm printing. And then they're like, they were great. Their customer service, I have to hand it to them. Their customer service was quick and responsive. I really felt like I was a valued member of in this process of I bought a product and they're the customer service. Polite, professional, the whole 9 yards. So definitely 2 thumbs up. Then it ends up that they send some instructions to, okay, well, you need to clear out the cache. And I said, I had just installed this program a few days ago. I haven't even printed anything. And they're like, well, you got to clear the cache. And so I did that for this program and cleared the cache, still same problems, and it's like, nope, still have the same problems. Well, then they're like, and they're going through the troubleshooting process as I was. And I'm thinking, well, let me try some different models. Let me try from different artists and different, because maybe this model is just cursed. It might be possessed, and maybe that's the problem. So stay away from cursed items. Well, apparently it's happening on all items from all artists, and I did 10 different items from 10 different artists, all free STL files or 3D printed files. Ones that I've seen online where people have downloaded and printed and they got awesome prints where they were, see, it comes up and it says force quit. And that's what happens. So, then it says it's using all of that and your system is run out of application memory, which it doesn't make sense. Yes, I'm going to force quit, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, but really, that doesn't make sense. Now, the reason that it doesn't make sense is because the free version, I've never had that problem at all. And that's the only reason why I bought the pro version was because the free version worked. And I thought, well, there's bells and whistles that it's included on the pro version that's not on the free. And I really love the free version. Apparently, yeah. So long story short, after going through all these troubleshooting procedures and relaying information back to Cheetah Box, and those guys are wonderful in dealing with the information. Well, what were you doing and what was this? And do you have background programs? And so, I went through the whole rigmarole and saying, I closed up startup programs that I normally start up upon booting up my computer. I closed all of those things. Different artists, different files, big, small, whatever it is, and files that I know absolutely 100% sure that other people have used on Cheetah Box, and for some reason it's not working. So it ends up, it's like, is it my system or is it the program? Well, since it works on the free program and it doesn't work on the pro program, that leads me to believe that it's a problem on their end. And long story short, it's a bug. They haven't run into it before, but this is a first-time bug. And what are the odds of that happening to me? Yeah, I need to buy a lottery ticket or not. I'm not sure. But yeah, so the whole thing was, hey, can I get my money back? And they were kind and said, yep, we totally understand. Keep us in mind. Our R&D and tech guys are going to be working on this. I said, yeah, send me an email when you're done. And because I'm still interested. Because Cheetah Box was the very first slicer program that I tried and that I had experience in. So there's like Cheetah Box, there's Litchi, or Litchi, however you want to pronounce it. There's Orca Slicer, there's Prusa. There's probably a couple other ones. There's one that came with my Saturn III Ultra printer. I forget the name of it, but a lot of people weren't impressed with it, so I haven't even cracked that open yet. But I heard the big things with Cheeto Box and Lychee. Yeah, and so kind of Cheeto Box is off the table now, at least for the paid version. So they're going to refund me my money and do that in 3 to 5 business days. So that brings us to Lychee, because I've seen a lot of people singing the praises of Lychee, or Lychee, or however you pronounce it. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to take a look at Lychee and pop this baby up here. Boom! Booyah! Check for updates. Blah, blah, blah. I've got to move this off to the side a little bit. No, I don't want to recover. And this Lychee is pretty similar in regards to kind of like Cheeto Box and kind of like some other programs that are slicing programs and so on and so forth. It's got some predetermined here things. You can, set your printer. You can choose the resin that you're using. I'm going to be PLA Resin Pro Gray. You can have multiple printers on here, and they can be set up on Wi-Fi and the whole 9 yards. It really kind of is some advanced stuff. You can put in the resin and change. There's so many variables on this stuff, like as we saw, but you can change all this stuff if you know what you're doing. I'm not. But fortunately, the company that I bought my printer from included a configuration file that had for the type of resin that I'm using. So we'll see what happens when we do the test print. So anyway, so there's that. And then you've got the history, you've got a library, import, and so on and so forth. And kind of the same type of setup. So we're going to add a file, and we're going to go to our desktop, and we're going to go back here, and we'll go back to files, and we'll go to 3D print files, and let's see if we can find Thanos again. There's Thanos, Infinity War, there's the bust. We'll click that, hit open, and bam! There we go. It loads up. Thanos is huge. Yeah, there's the build plate, and I like the color scheme of this already. It just, I don't know, it fills me with joy. It just sparks joy, kind of like that Marie Kondo lady chick. If it doesn't spark joy, get rid of it. This sparks joy. So we're going to click this, and we saw a little bit down here where he's kind of off of the build plate. That's where you get that weird color from. And so, he's definitely a little bit too big. So we're going to go over here to the left. We're going to hit scale, and we're going to bring him down to size. And it's about a little bit more. We'll take him down to 108, 117, 125, 130. The other thing I don't like about this is that on this right-hand side where you have your scale for X, Y, and Z, is that it doesn't real-time increase as you increase or decrease the scale. So you have to move it, and then you stop, and then it'll update that in millimeters. Now, the cool thing is that over here on the right-hand side, it's in millimeters, or it can be in inches. So as we change the scale, we can actually change and see that this is going to be about, 5.3 inches. 5.16 and about 5 inches tall. So that's kind of cool. I like that you can go from inches to millimeters. Excuse me. And then you can also change the scale in regards to percentages. So you could update that as you want. And uniform scaling can be on or off. So if you take it off, then you could make it really wide, make it really deep, or make it really tall and not touch the other axes. But we're going to leave that the way it is. And now we're just going to go to rotate. And we're going to grab that little bar it there and see that he's kind of in the same position as we did before. That's good enough. We'll just go back to the home. And again, in the upper right hand corner, we can go to the front. Of course, that's kind of a big view, but it'll rotate and you can check out, and then you can also go to the top and get a top-down view and all that stuff. So we're just going to go back to the home view and boom, we're good. Now the other thing it has is this magic button. This magic button is supposedly a magic button so that it'll automatically orientate it. If you hit it and you say you're feeling lucky, it'll auto-orientate this in the way that the computer program and the algorithm thinks it would print best. It'll put on the auto supports, optimized supports, bracing supports, a wrap, the whole 9 yards, with either light, medium, or heavy. We're not going to do that. Excuse me, talking too much. So we're just going to go up here to the top and hit prepare, where we've got the similar support system, and we've got all this neat stuff, and we're going to add some supports. You can do manual supports, auto supports. There's so many different ways in which you could add supports and bracings to your model that you have here, and it's amazing. The paid version of Litchi Slicer Pro, and they have this program for resin printers, and then they have for FDM printers as well. So, of course, you got to pay. But the amount of adjustments that you can make on this are insane. But we just want to do automatic supports to show you that generate automatic supports. We'll click that and analyze, runs through. Bam! Bracings, the whole 9 yards. And this is what I really like. If you see here, 346 supports. 10 supports were not placed due to not finding a place to go. 17 islands supports were added. So in other words, unsupported areas. It just, man, it's just cool stuff. And so it'll give you, like under his chin, those probably need supports. So as you can see, they got little branch supports. So, excuse me, while the program is good, you're still going to have to go through and add supports to this model. And again, you can end up, you can see they have, multiple supports along there. But you can put these in places to where the supports won't be as noticeable when you break them off. So probably under the collar there, at a place that you can't see them. But yeah, you noticed how that worked. And let's see, I did Prusa Slicer. I did, what was the other one? Orca. That one worked with all of the models that I did in regards to the auto supports. The Litchi Pro was the only one that didn't work for me because of the new bug. So yeah, even though I tried before I buyed, it's still, there's no guarantee. So as much as I suggest people try before you buy, and then you buy, you still might have some problems. But then again, you're not me. And again, just some of the joys of starting a new hobby, which is really interesting. So yeah, similar here, and you can go up to export, and you have some other settings. Pick the resin that you're going to be using. You can go back to that. You can do anti-aliasing, which you can have contrast, blur, sharpen details, smooth, or you can have it in the off destination file, or put it onto a drive or onto your computer, a USB, slice to a file. And let's see. So yeah, I can slice to a file. Does this have, can I send this to my printer? Export scene, export to scene file, export to file there. Of course, I could hollow this out and do all that stuff. Oh, can this? I know this has got to be interesting, because I know you can import. Now that's bringing something in. We want to export it to edit history object view. So I can't remember whether or not this will send it over Wi-Fi. I'm not sure. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, yeah, there's different things that come into the mix here, and depending on different slicing programs, and yeah, so there's that. Now here's some other cool stuff that I thought. Graphical representation, like here is an art scale of what this would look like in regards to a banana, a Coke can, a pen. So that's kind of cool. I thought that was really neat. And then they have the simulator over here, show print simulation. So here's what we end up seeing. And it'll run through this print simulation. So it'll print all this stuff. And again, the model is hanging upside down. So it's doing the supports. And so that white line represents the layer that the UV light is hitting and hardening that resin as that comes up. And boom, then you get it. Can I scale this back and see? Okay. Yeah, you actually can. So that's kind of a cool thing right there. As you can see your build plate and the resin hardens and how it builds over that amount of time to get your model. That is just really cool. I mean, how cool is that? That is just awesome. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Really neat. Objects, what is that? That's not what we want. Slice. Yeah, we already did that. To file. I'm honestly wondering. It's like now it's, oh, that's not it there. I'm wondering if this can be sent through Wi-Fi. End user, can I visit the website? Okay. I don't know. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's very interesting. So, yeah, very interesting indeed. So I don't want to do that. I just want to. There's our model. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of information that comes in a kind of a little bit of a steep learning curve when we're talking about using a printer program, slicer program like Chitubox or Litchi or whatever you're going to end up using. They're pretty much similar in a lot of aspects in the way that they're organized and the user interface. Some have more bells and whistles than others. Some will swear on Chitubox Pro. Obviously, I can't do that. But then again, I'm on a Mac, but then all the other slicer programs never had any problems with doing the exact same files from different artists and so on and so forth. So yeah, if it's the bug, a new bug, then the people at Chitubox can obviously get this fixed, and it is what it is. But for right now, I was turned on to Litchi or Litchi or whatever, however you pronounce it, and it ends up it's like now I really have an affinity to this. And I've been playing with this more and more, so I think this is going to be my go-to slicer program. We'll see. I paid for a year, got a discount. I think it was a 20% discount that they got going on. Check their website or whatever. But I want that up to the next. No, I don't want to go up. So you could use this on multiple devices, like if you had a print farm or had multiple people to have access to this program. Obviously, a more commercial grade type of option. And then they also have one for FDM printer. So you can either get the resin printer, Litchi slicer, or you could get one for an FDM printer, Litchi Pro slicer, or you could do a bundle and have one of each or whatever. You just got to check their website and do all that. So, yes, that's what we have. And I'm trying to quit. There we go. And we'll go back here to where we're looking at you. So, yeah, really interesting stuff going on in regards to 3D printing. And I've had some people already contact me and ask me, well, how is it just, load, print, and boom, you have it? No, there is a learning curve when it comes to all of this stuff. It's, for the printer, some printers are better than others. Some printers have more bells and whistles than others. Some do Wi-Fi, some don't. My printer's got a Wi-Fi connection. And I think, I don't know, let me look. That is a very good question. Let me ask that. Can I send 3D prints from Lychee Pro to printer over Wi-Fi? And yes, Lychee Slicer can export G-code files directly to a printer running Clipper or Octoprint via Wi-Fi. This can speed up your workflow and eliminate temporary G-code. So yes, obviously it does, and I need to look into that more. So, but yeah, that's what we got going on. A lot of cool, interesting stuff in regards to Lychee and Cheeto Box. Definitely try. There's a lot of people out there who do 3D printing and just use the free version, the basic free versions that you get from Lychee or Prusa or Cheeto Box or whatever, and that's all they use. They do all their supports manually, which I'm finding out that's probably what you're going to end up doing anyway to get more successful prints as long as you have good support system in. So there's entire classes on YouTube for that as well. So yeah, aside from the other inordinate amount of time I spent on YouTube for resin printers and researching and reading and making an informed decision on which one I was going to get, yeah, now there's even more learning that I have to do. So I don't know. It's kind of like be careful on the hobbies you choose and understand that with 3D resin printing, you're going to have some consumables that come into play. Like I said, you got to have your nitrile gloves, you have your IPA, you have your resin that you have to buy, and generally it's anywhere from $20 to $30 per liter, which is interesting. And how many figures can you print with a liter of resin? I don't know. It depends on how big the miniatures are, or the figures, or the items that you're printing. You got to do the math to figure all that stuff out. But you're going to have some recurring costs, and people have gone so far as to filter out their used IPA to get all that old resin out of it, and yeah, it's a pretty time-intensive type of hobby. So yeah, it is what it is. So anyway, that's what we got going on. I thought I'd bring that up, and yeah, good stuff. So anyway, and this video also did a couple of things for me. I was able to play around with my Ecamm Live, be able to put in a couple of different webcams, and then my Blue Yeti microphone, which I've got right here. That hopefully that's working as well. That's plugged in. We won't know until I upload this or stop this and it's uploaded, and we'll see if the sound is good and all that stuff. So yeah, hit a couple of birds with one stone and we'll be good to go. So in summary, there's a lot that is entailed when it comes to 3D printing and resin printing. Not only for equipment, because you need your printer, you need some type of wash and cure station, unless you just want a bucket of IPA and a scrub brush and just set it out in the sunlight to cure your prints, or you DIY a cure station of your own, but you're still going to have pay money to get some type of UV light source and jerry rig all that stuff. So, and then on top of that, then you need to learn the slicer program and how to do supports and the settings for your printer and based on your resin, and you could be underexposed and overexposed. And the best way I can explain it is that the resin hardens when UV light hits it. But if you don't have enough or a long enough period of time of UV light to hit it, it's going to be underexposed. So the print in that area is going to be a little bit smaller. If you overexpose your resin, so in other words, UV light hits that resin and the light stays on for too long, you'll overexpose it. And that's a whole different set of problems. And so what you want is kind of like, you want to be right in the middle there. And there's test things that you can run, test pieces, and you can change your exposure times to, we're going to do this one in 1 second, do this one, increments of a half second or a quarter second or whatever it is. You can get some really detailed information, but it's also kind of a steep learning curve. But once you get it, then you're good to go. But do realize that if you change resins and use different types of resins, you're going to have to do that dial-in process, and that will have a big effect on the success or failure of your prints as well. So, yeah. So that's it. There we went through it all. And I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to finish up this broadcast. We'll see what it sounds like. It's an hour and 20 minutes. And take it from there. So if you got any questions, put it in the comment section down below. Well, if this works, it could be that the mic's not working or something's not working. Might even be to where this doesn't even upload to anything at all, and I might lose the file. I don't know. But hopefully not. But you can check out The Varied Life on YouTube, where I will put more of this 3D printing stuff. I do some stuff because I just got into painting miniatures, Warhammer 40,000, as I'm a noob at that as well. And hopefully you can learn from my experiences and sharing things. And the more experienced people, you can clue me in and get me squared away as well. So it kind of, it helps out everybody. And I really appreciate the help. All right, so that's it. The Varied Life on YouTube. Like, subscribe, hit that bell, do what you need to do to see more videos. And I'm also retired in Korea. So if you're a service member and you're retired and or you have a spouse that has Korean ancestry, you can check out my page and it'll clue you in on how to get long-term visa here in Korea, which isn't really a big expat destination for retirement like Thailand or Philippines or things like that, or Portugal or whatever. But it is possible. So you can check that out as well. All right, so that's it. We'll see you on the next one. Peace. All righty, there we go. End of broadcast.